Good morning once again, everybody. We are now officially starting our webinar. It's 6:05, or rather 11:05 on your end in Nigeria. We welcome everybody from wherever you're coming in, whether it's Nigeria, whether it's UK, whether it's US, whether it's Canada. A warm welcome to you. Um, I'm sure you are all curious about what this webinar is gonna be about. Workplace issues. We've given a bit of teaser, but we're here today for your benefits to provide as much insight as we can. We're all professionals in one way or the other, whether business owners, whether we are professionals that go to work every day. And we know that the workplace is terrain that we all have to maneuver. And in the process of going through that, there might be conflicts, there might be issues, and we might have questions with regards to how to make your professional life more comfortable, or how to seamlessly navigate professional life as an employer or as an employee. We're here today to answer some questions you might have and hopefully give you valuable insights that would grow your company and yourself as a professional, and strengthen you and open your workplace to make it a comfortable and delightful one for you to go into every day and participate in. So just a disclaimer, we are not providing professional advice to anyone during the session. If you want advice, please reach out to us. We understand that each person's case is different, dynamics are different. So we wouldn't like to assume that whatever advice we give here is a free-for-all or would be applicable to everyone. So please feel free to reach out. As we go along during the webinar, we would love to have questions from our attendees. So please feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A session. We will take them as we go along. This is more of a Q&A session, so we would really welcome questions from you, and our professionals are here to answer them to the best of their ability. And if we cannot answer them on here, please drop your email, reach out to us by email. We will be providing our contact information so that you can follow up with us and ask those specific questions if you need to. So I now would like to invite our panelists to tell us a little bit about themselves and their role in Workplace Consulting Limited. I'm going to call on Mrs. Oluwakemi Oduwole first to do the introductions, and then Mr. Sunday Ajao would go next. Mrs. Oduwole, you should unmute yourself.
Thank you so much, Anu. I want to welcome everyone to this webinar this morning. It's so good to see everyone here on this Easter morning. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Oluwakemi Oduwole. I'm a lawyer by training. I'm the managing partner of a law firm in Canada called Top Market Attorneys. My professional experience spans with working in immigration law. I work with workplace matters and issues, and I also teach at Queen's University in a program in immigration law. I enjoy programs in workplace, and I'm also involved in leadership when it comes to leadership trainings, providing trainings for people. And I welcome everyone, and we hope to hear more questions from you, and we'll be able to deliberate together. Thank you.
So thank you so much, Ms. Oduwole, and Hannah, thank you again. Good morning, everyone, and welcome again to this webinar this morning. My name is Sunday Ajao. I'm an HR professional. I have about 20 years of experience practicing HR across multinational companies, financial companies, and consulting world. In addition to my work experience, I operate in the workplace consulting arena. I have a big heart for ensuring that we have a free and fair workplace. I am involved in training, and I'm a certified workplace investigator as well. So in addition to that, I have a certification in HR at a leader level. And again, we are here today to like the moderator said, to answer as many questions that you have and to give you, information that you can take back to your organizations to ensure that, you can, start practicing things, using best practices that is out there, and ensuring that, we are all aligning to what it's going to benefit the employers and the employees as a whole. So welcome everyone to this webinar.
Okay, thank you so much for those introduction. I realized I haven't introduced myself too. So my name is Anu Oduole. I am a research analyst at Top Market Attorneys, and I have tons of experience doing interviews. I participate in the trainings and assessments at Workplace Consulting. I find it's really important to get to know how your organization is structured. I'm very excited to know more about organizations and see how they can be at their full potential. So that's me with Workplace Consulting. I'm going to invite Mrs. Oduole to talk a little bit about Workplace Consulting itself as a business and some of the services that it provides.
Thank you, Anu. It's a pleasure for me to introduce Workplace Consulting. Our goal at Workplace Consulting is to ensure that businesses and institutions create a healthy and productive workspace. So our aim is to ensure that businesses, institutions have ability to achieve their corporate goals, and the employees also have maximization doing their work. So in order to achieve these, we collaborate with organizations, businesses, to create and implement policies and initiative as well that would ensure there is a conducive workplace with seamless and continuous improvement for business processes and employee protection. Additionally, in developing policies for businesses and organizations, we ensure they are sector-driven, and we ensure that these businesses are designed in such a way to reduce human conflict. We know where we have people working together, conflict is a natural human nature, but our role is to ensure that there are policies put in place in order to reduce and ultimately remove such conflicts that causes challenges to productivities in workplace. Additionally, we assist organizations to identify the needs analysis in order for them to be able to develop solutions and target their learning strategies so that organizations, businesses can support individuals and teams to exceed corporate objectives and achieve individual goals. So what we do in Workplace Consulting is essentially to make sure that a workplace maximizes potential of achieving corporate goals and also employee satisfaction, retention, and engagement. Another thing we help workplaces to achieve is workplace assessment. Assessment is a bid to be able to re-engage, restart, reorganize a workplace. So in doing that, we look at existing policies. If there are none, we help them to design policies as I've explained above. And this is to ensure that we create a new workplace culture and processes. And this will be providing incentives, evaluation metrics, which would ultimately improve motivation, innovation, productivity for businesses. And in doing this, Workplace Consulting has a team of professionals that has comprehensive knowledge in human resources. Our team consists of HR consultants and lawyers with specializations in trainings and development, talent management, compensation and benefit policies, governance, and they bring years of experience from practicing in different jurisdictions in order to provide satisfaction for our clientele. And the major task we also involve on is in training. We help workplace to provide trainings for all levels, the mid-level, junior levels, senior levels, in achieving a seamless workplace. So that's just a nutshell. And you can find more information about us on our website, and that would be posted for you as we go along in this program. Once again, thank you for coming.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Oduole, for that wonderful introduction. Mr. Joe, can you tell us, some of the perspective some of the perspectives human resource brings into workplace consulting?
Yeah, thank you so much, I know. I mean, as Mrs. Odewale has said now, for you to have a conducive work environment, it takes getting human beings to work together, in a very perfect environment. And HR is the engine, that makes all these things, come together. When she was introducing, what workplace consulting actually handle, she talked about the policies and procedures. This is the bedrock for any organizations because this is the document, these are the, guidelines that dictate how organization should be run. It speaks to how you can ensure you have consistency, how you can ensure that you have a, fair and equally treat your employees, how you can ensure that you have compliance in place to ensure that you are working within the guidelines that is acceptable to different regulations. So when you're looking about how HR comes into play and how how important it is in any work environment, you have to come to the understanding that to have a productive environment, you need to have employees that believe in the vision. And how do you do that? Again, ensuring that you have mechanism in place to give guidelines to employees, ensuring that they understand what they have to do, there are expectations and there are consequences. So basically, HR brings everything together in terms of how do you ensure that employees understand what they have to do, and employers, again, they are guided to ensure that they provide an environment where employees can succeed.
Thank you so much for that, Mr. Jao. So now we know that you as professionals or business owners have some basic questions that you expect us to cover during this webinar. We're going to answer some of those questions. I'm going to pose the questions to our panelists, and they're going to give us answers to those questions. And then we're going to take questions from you, the attendees. So please feel free at any time, drop questions that you have into the Q&A or the chat box, and we will take them as we go along. So first question, what are some modern trends that we have in the workplace right now? I would leave this open to any of our panelists to take. Yeah.
Okay, let me start, and Mr. Dewale can come in. When you're talking about trends, I think we have to take a step back and look at what has happened in the past few years. With COVID pandemic coming into place, a lot of things have changed, and it's not just the workplace; it's how we live our life, generally. So when you're looking at what is out there right now, you will see that within the past 2-3 years, the dynamics of workplace have changed. In the past, you have to be in the four walls of an office for you to operate. We have to ensure that you get to the office for you to be able to do what you have to do. But now there's remote work. Employees can work everywhere, and that comes with a different challenge. And that is that is where the impact of HR cannot be overemphasized, because now you have to look at what are the things that you need to put in place now that were not in place about 2 or 4 years ago. What are the risks that you need to assess now? What are policies that you need to design or redesign to ensure that it fits the way that people work nowadays? And what are the things that you have to put in place, as a guide, mitigations to ensure that, because again, different workplace, different processes. You have issues to deal with privacy because now people are working in the four walls of their homes. How do you ensure that you are keeping track of what the employees are doing? How do you manage productivity? So the big thing now is about remote work. On the employee side, how do you maintain your sanity? Because you are working now where you don't have colleagues, where you may not be able to take a long break, where you will not be able to take go for tea break. So working from home, working remotely wherever you are, how do you as an employee get engaged? How do you retain your mental health? And even for employer, how do you ensure that you are engaging the employee? Because again, different ways to collaborate now, but how effective that is. So a number of things have changed over time. There's big focus now even on on discrimination across the world, because we've had so many issues that, again, because the terrain is changing, different dynamics are coming in. You see employees working in their home, being in the same environment with their families for so long is affecting families as well. So a number of things have changed, within the past couple of years, which means that even as employers, we cannot be static. Every time there's a change in the way that we live, it means you have to revisit what you have in place as an employer and try to adapt to the new trend of things. So I will let Mr. Duwale come in, and if I have any other points, I will chime in after. But those are some of the things that has been is on the ongoing now.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ajao. And just like you said, the effect of the pandemic has really brought a new dynamics, with respect to flexible mode of work, comes the idea of digitalization. And so what this means for employers is that a lot of employers, like you said, some of the issue is ability to be able to monitor what employees are doing at home. So that means employers would have to heavily invest in digitalization of processes. Employees, on the other hand, as well, have to learn basics of digitalization, how to be able to use Zoom, share screen, you find people who are in the mid of their years finding it difficult, but that's the reality of today's world. And this cuts across all industries, even manufacturing industry, things are automated now, customer services, things are automated. So digitalization is a huge one. And talking of this digitalization also brings the issue of artificial intelligence, AI. We have the issue of ChatGPT trending now, which is bringing challenges for both the employee and the employers. Employee are wondering if computer is going to take up their jobs. Employer are wondering, do they need to change their services dynamics? What would the world look like? And bringing the effect of that shows that the business of the world of today, agility is the thing. What that means is responsiveness. Business is not as usual. Whatever we do as business and institution, it needs to be flexible. The pathway is not a straight line anymore. And those are part of the opportunities we at Workplace Consulting provide for businesses in order to be able to make them flexible and navigate changing circumstances. One other thing readily comes to mind, and it is just from experience of friends that I've discussed with in recent times. And I discovered that there is a pursuit of non-traditional candidates. And this is very important for employees and potential employees. Studies have shown that hiring managers are less concerned with industry experience and technical experience. I was discussing with a friend a few weeks ago, and he works in financial sector, but very, very, very high tensed environment, dealing with figures, calculations, ability to be able to think on your feet. And he was sharing with me that they had about 10 candidates shortlisted, that the person they picked was actually on experience and technicality was the least, but they picked the person. I was now wondering why that person. He said one, although I think he said in their department, there are 9 men and 1 female. They wanted a female. And that is part of the things Mr. Jawa has discussed earlier, EDI. Equity, diversity, inclusion is now a serious issue. They picked her. But the most important thing for them was that she was teachable. When they asked questions, she was able to say, oh, if I don't have this, how can I learn better? Employers want people that have teachable spirits, people that they can teach the content. So it's very important for people to know that assessments at the place of work is beyond industry experience and technicality. There are a lot of soft skills now that makes a difference. And I think one more thing I would also like to state is I've seen the trend of what we call quiet hiring, where employers focus down on acquiring new skills, but not technically bringing them in as full-time. And this is another offshoot of the pandemic, where people are able to bring people to specialize and just do this maybe as a consultant, as contracts and things like that. So these are things that employers are doing in order to be able to ensure that they attract the best skills, and at the same time, they don't break bank doing that. So these are some of the things that comes to mind with. I don't know if Essie has anything to add to that.
Yeah, so you did raise so many fantastic points, and I was just going to just hone in on one of them. With the way the world is now, you did mention that it's not about technicality alone, which is very key. You know, employers, they are looking for fit now. You know, you need to be able to align to the culture of the organization. I mean, just like we said, you know, there's this opportunity to work from anywhere now. So how can I, as an employer, be certain that you are connected, you know, to the DNA of the organization? How can I be sure that, you know, you have the culture, you know, as your backbone in everything that you do? So just, you know, an advice to employees, things are not the way it used to be. It is not just about what you know, but about how you fit into the culture of an organization and how flexible you are. Sharing an experience, you know, currently in the financial industry in Canada, and we have some companies that they want the employees to come back to the office, but there has been a lot of resistance. And you say, you know, it has gotten to a stage now that, you know, culture is becoming, you know, the differentiator, you know, for the employer now. They are looking at people that understand where the employer is coming from. Because like we said, during the pandemic, you know, all companies put their employees back into a remote work environment. Does it mean it's going to continue that way? It may not. So how flexible, how agile are you? And how connected are you to the culture of an organization? Very key, not just about the technical ability. So we need to start working on all our soft skills to ensure that we are able to be productive and we're able to actually have you know, a long haul with the employers that we may be employed, we may be engaged with.
Thank you both so much for those wonderful answers. You've really given us insights into some things that both employees and employers need to look out for in our world today. So the next question that I'm going to pose to you both is, what are some common workplace challenges that professionals and organizations would now tend to face? Based on some of the insights you've given us into the trends today, what are some challenges that you think both professionals themselves and organizations would be facing?
Well, I can come into that straight. One major factor that is trending now is performance issues. Given the fact that there's hybrid employment now, where people could either work from home or total remote work situation. So it becomes a serious issue for managers to be able to assess how employees are performing. And another issue is how to address where there are performance issues, especially given the trend of mental health of employees. And if performance issues are not addressed early on time, it definitely would impact targets. It would impact the company's productivity, finances, and it would also affect the morale of people on the team, if it's a team job or the business as a whole. So that is a very important issue when it comes to issues at the workplace. And some of the things that could be done by managers, supervisors, company owners, in order to be able to tackle with performance issues, is to quickly determine the reason. Once you see lapse in an employee, the first thing is just to call the person immediately. Don't allow it to linger for long. Quickly determine what are the reasons for the performance issues. You know, is it mental health? Does the person need support and things like that? So that is very important in addressing that. And another important thing when it comes to that is also crucial to help the person to put processes and things in place in order to support. Some, it could be lack of technical knowledge. Some, it could be inability to be able to manage time. So it's very important to be able to do that. And in order to also address that, I think it would be good to provide the regular feedback and support to be able to assess that. And employees too need to know that no matter whatever support, no matter the extent of support an employer gives, there has to be yardsticks for measurement, because ultimately, if an employee does not perform, then they have to be let go. As an employer myself, I know that sometimes it's very difficult to let employees go, because you know these are livelihood of people, especially people that have worked with you for long. But the truth is that no matter how much support you give employees and assessment mark you give them, if they don't change, the ultimate is the bottom line of the business and they have to be let go. So that is an important issue. And another thing that I would just like to raise with this issue is conflict in the workplace. Like I said earlier, workplace is filled with human beings, and where there are human beings, there's bound to be conflict. So how is conflict navigated? Even within employees on a team, with respect to managers and those working under the managers of supervisor, with respect to employers, employees, how is conflict navigated and managed? And one thing that is very important is that people are at a workplace because of their divergent perspective and viewpoints, because it's that viewpoints, different viewpoints they bring that brings about innovation and productivity as a workplace. So one important thing with respect to differences, conflict, is to check it in the board. Because if it's not checked and a supervisor or an employer just keep putting it under the rug, it turns to a cancerous thing and it intoxicates a workplace. It just makes it totally poisonous. So the most important thing is conflict management. If it's issues within employees, it's easy to identify what is the conflict, immediately address the conflict, set regular meetings, provide an atmosphere where people could give feedbacks. And from my experience, where I've experienced this as somebody in a supervisory capacity, I found out that one important thing to do when it comes to conflict management is to ensure that issues are separated from people. That's very important. And to also let people know that there are times and places for there to be correction and conflict management. The ultimate with conflict management is company policies. So where there are policies in place and employees have been put through the process of, if there's a conflict, if there's this, you do that, that's the best thing that could happen in a workplace to both the employer and the employee, in reducing whatever conflicts that may come up with respect to that. I would let Mr. Ajao go on, and if I have anything to add, I'll come back again. Yes, Mr. Jones.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I think in addition to everything you have said, Ms. Odewale, I think one other thing that is a challenge nowadays is employee engagement. In addition to doing what you do every day at work, how do you engage your employees? How do they stay connected to the organization? Like we said before, the hybrid, before the remote work, there are so many opportunities for you to create activities to engage your employees while in the work environment. But the challenge now is, how do you do that remotely in a way that is efficient for employees? So that is one thing that most organizations are grappling with, because again, everything is remote now. So you have to really be, you have to think on your feet to ensure that every day that your employees are working 9 to 5, how do they stay engaged? In addition to that, we did mention about the issue about mental health. Now people have, they are not together, so to say, in a workplace. How do you ensure that you are checking in on the state of your employees? Because again, working within the four walls of their home, family, pressure, everything is around them. So what are the things that employers are doing nowadays to watch out for their employees? Because for you to have a productive employee, they need to have a sound mind. Another challenge that we've seen of lately is hours of work. And this goes both ways. Because employees are remote now, some managers do have expectations that, yeah, because you are not committed to the office, I want you to be up and running by 8 o'clock. Some employees, because they are working remotely, they get burnt out, they want clock hours. And these are issues that can lead to conflicts. Because again, if there's no clear understanding, if the policy doesn't actually support the process, you may run into the issue of employees claiming that I work overtime, I'm not being compensated. And you have managers that are saying, you have to be up by 8 o'clock, you have to be up by 10 p.m. for you to do what you have to do. So how do you ensure that you have your arm wrapped around all these issues? It requires it requires the employers to be agile, for you to continually look at what you do today and how does that actually hold water tomorrow. Because like we said, it's not having a policy in place for the past 5 years, that is not going to get your employer to get your company organization to the next level. You need to constantly review your policy. You need to constantly review your guidelines. So where do you need to make adjustment based on what is trending now, and where do you need? And again, is employer-employee relationship. Both parties have to work together. So I don't know, Kay, if you have any other thing to add to that.
Yeah, I just have a last thing to say to that. And these are consequences of a toxic work environment. That's another important issue. And when we talk of issues that bring in a toxic environment, we talk of racism, bullying, harassment, discrimination. These are things that we face in a workplace, and they need to be addressed and dealt with immediately. And having policies in place, just like you said, policies must support processes. So if there are policies in place to support processes and things like this that occur, it will be addressed and nipped in the bud. So that is another challenge that employees and employers face in a workplace.
Yeah. Thank you both so much for those wonderful insights into the question of common challenges in the workplace. Reminder to our participants to please drop their questions in the chats, in the Q&A sessions, and we'll get to them as we are going through some of the questions we have on ground. The next question I am going to pose to Mr. Ajao. The question goes, how do I handle employee issues at the workplace? This is coming from the perspective of an employer.
Thank you so much, Ms. Ano. I think the first thing I would like to say is that employee issues at workplace is not, the issues may not be the same. Each issue is different. Where I'm going is that you cannot have one approach, to deal with all the issues. You have to look at all issues independently. Talking about the process, the first thing is for you to get your facts. So you need to gather information. Whenever an employee brings up an issue, you need to ensure that you are working from the fact angle, not from the story angle. Because it's possible for you to have a fantastic story from employees, but what are the facts underlying the issues that the employee is raising? And one thing that we always encourage the employers to do is to listen actively. Because most times when issues are raised, even though at that point in time, it might be something that could be of negative, effects to an employee. But if as employer, you listen actively to the issues being raised and you are able to address it, you are putting your organization on the path for success, because it means the issue has been taken care of. So ensuring that as employers we listen actively to issues being raised is key to ensure that we can handle it, in the right way. And like I said earlier, you need to identify what the issue is. You need to clearly identify the issue that the employee is raising. Because sometimes you have a situation whereby, employees are coming with multitude of issues, which may not even be, related to the employer per se. So understanding that when issues are raised, how does it affect the employee and how does it affect the employer? And in addition to that, you need to develop a plan for you to be able to address the issue. One thing that is very critical is that with what is going on in the world today, it is important as employers for us to ensure that whenever issues are raised, they are addressed. What is also key in the process is communication. Between employees and employer, there needs to be that open communication. And most of the issues that we are seeing in workplace nowadays is because of absence of policies and procedures. Because you have a situation where the employee doesn't know the expectations and the employer is expecting something else. Or you have a situation whereby the manager doesn't know what needs to be done to ensure that the employee is aligned to the company cultures and goals, and that causes a conflict. So basically, if I have to do a quick recap, you need to ensure that you are working from the fact angles, you are gathering all the information that you need to look into the issues being raised. As employer, you need to listen to your employees. You need to work with them to resolve the issues. Because again, an issue that is not resolved can actually lead to a bigger thing for the employer. So are you ensuring that for every issue raised, you are addressing them appropriately. And again, this is where professionals comes in, because sometimes there could be issues that as an employer, you may not have the right resource to handle them within yourself. And that is why a company like Workplace Consulting is there. So if employees are raising issues that is beyond the ability of in-house personnel to handle, feel free to reach out to a professional. Feel free to engage them to mediate in the situation to ensure that we can have that resource for the employees. So Mr. Dewale, I don't know if you have anything to say on that.
No, I think you've adequately addressed that. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that wonderful answer. It's really important that we have this at the back of our minds as we, as employers, run our businesses. So I'm going to go on to the next question, and I will pose this to Mrs. Odwale. The question goes, what can I do if I feel like I'm being discriminated against in the workplace? So please give us some insights into this. Thank you.
Thank you, Anu. I like the way you phrased that question. It says, when I feel like I'm being discriminated against in a workplace. It's very important to identify what is happening in a workplace. Like Mr. Ajawu just said that where there are issues at the workplace, you don't just look at the story, you look at the fact. And I remember I've dealt in a workplace before where somebody actually reported discrimination. The person brings a particular type of lunch to work, and the supervisor realizes that I think maybe what they use to warm food or things like that would not support the kind of food that person brings to the office. So they provided something else for her so that it could accommodate her to be able to eat. But since she's the only one that brings that type of meal, she's the only one using it. So to her, she felt she was being discriminated against and said to use something different while others were using something different. But it was at the end of the day when they had both parties that she realized that she was actually being accommodated and not discriminated against, So these are issues that arise in the workplace. When a person feels discrimination at the workplace, is a validated feeling. That's why there should be policies and processes put in place so that we'll be able to identify if there is really a discrimination or there is a misunderstanding. And this is an issue of communication in a workplace as well. Mr. Jawad mentioned that earlier. There has to be clear communication in a workplace so that people's intentions, good or not, are not thought of or interpreted in a negative manner. So when a person feels that a person is being targeted or discriminated against in the workplace, the first thing a person needs to do is to document such incidents, A person needs to keep record. Where did the incident happen? What happened? What date? What time? Where did the event happen? Who are the witnesses there? Especially where we have staff that work in numerous locations, or we have people like truck drivers, who park their vehicles somewhere else, who go to another place to pick up deliveries, who go to other places to drop deliveries. So these incidents could have happened in the course of one transaction, but the person could have been in 3 or 4 locations. So it's very important to keep record of that. And another important thing with respect to discrimination is an employee needs to know company policies. And so this is where policies also come in place. And employee would see that we've been discussing about corporate policies. And Mr. Jao mentioned something earlier as well, that once a policy has been drafted, it doesn't mean it's set on stone. Companies must be active to ensure that these policies are updated with the trajectories and the ongoing change in policies and things that are going on. So an employee needs to familiarize herself with corporate policies on discrimination and harassment. What are the steps to take? When you feel harassed, what do you do? A lot of policies would have in place that probably the person discusses with the colleague. And if it's a supervisor, you speak to your manager and things like that. So there should be policy put in place. And if the person had followed the procedure that is set in the policies and nothing seems to happen, then the person will speak to a manager. And it's very important to have a corporate workplace that is conducive, where people would be able to speak to their manager to ensure that the disputes are resolved. I've had experience of incidences where people have had good employers, good managers who have been able to informally try to settle such disputes. And if it doesn't work, or even after it was settled, the discrimination persists, then the person would file a formal complaint. And that also still brings us back to policies. What does the company policy has about complaints? So, and if nothing is done, then a person may need to seek help externally by getting a lawyer. But if a person works in a workplace where there are no policies in place, employers that have no policies in place for matters like this exposes themselves as well. Because if they are not careful, it will be a vicarious liability where they will be held responsible for negative actions of their other staff on other staff, because it will be deemed that they are not creating a conducive environment for their staff. So an employer can say, I'm not the one that did it, it's between employee to another employee. It's the duty of an employer to provide a safe space for all employees that work for them. So it's very important to know that discrimination is illegal, and a person must not endure torture just because you want to keep your job. It is illegal to discriminate. So a person should be able to voice out. But once there are policies in place, employers to a great deal are insulated for whatever may be the consequences, where there are just employees that have these matters in place. And even if it's a manager or somebody who is in an upper level, that a person feel has been discriminating against her, and there's no other person to report to, a person should feel bold to confront the person. And if nothing comes up for it, then a person may need to seek legal counsel with respect to discrimination at the workplace. I don't know if Mr. Jao has anything to add to that.
Oh, well, I mean, you said it all. I think one other thing I can just add to that is I think one of the major challenge that we see, especially in some, not much in the Western world, but in some other parts of the country, is the role effect. You know, when you're talking about discrimination, like you said, it could be between employee and employee, but most times it's from the top, you know, to the employees below. And, you know, there's something that is called a role effect. You know, when you have, you know, leaders that is my word against their word, you know, which makes it challenging, you know, for people to speak up. But again, this is where a platform like this, you know, is being, you know, projected. You know, feel free to speak up, you know, anytime you are discriminated against. But it is also important, like Mr. Duwale said at the beginning, that you have to be a credible individual. You know, credibility is big, you know, when it comes to discrimination, because it's not something that should just be taken for granted. When there's no issue, you just don't raise flags. So for you to claim to be a victim, you need to have a credible, you know, story that you want to tell. And it's all about facts, because sometimes we are inferring things. You know, we are, as employees, we are thinking that things is being done to me, seeing it only from my angle. Like Mr. Dewale did mention, accommodation. I've seen lots of people that complain that how come this employee has this particular keyboard and I don't have that part, you know, that type of keyboard. But again, the employee you are looking at that you think you have been discriminated against is actually on accommodation. So we just want to encourage employees to ensure that before you raise an issue, ensure that you have your facts right. And again, employers, we need to listen and we need to investigate every complaint that is brought up. It doesn't have to be written, you know, it could be verbal. You know, anytime there's a complaint in any form or shape, is the duty of an employer to investigate and look into it.
Yep. Thank you so much for those wonderful insights. You know, you've really touched on one of the major challenges that seems to be in the workplace around today. So I have two follow-up questions with regards to this particular question, particularly because we are talking about a workplace challenge here. So there's this new trend, or this new word going around. It's called workplace investigation. So I'm going to pose one question to Mrs. Oduwale and the other question to Mr. Jao. For Mrs. Oduwale, the question is, what is workplace investigation and what's its importance to the workplace. And for Mr. Jao, the question is, how important is it to train HR staff on workplace issues and investigation processes within organizations? So.
All right, thank you, Anu. So when we talk about workplace investigation, the name may sound so high-handed, but it's a system in order to support both an employer and an employee. Just like the example we've given here, if there is an harassment or somebody has reported discrimination, if an employer had tried to resolve it internally and is not able to resolve it, then an investigator like myself or Mr. Jao can be brought into the company. And the role of the investigator from the word is to do the work of a detective. So the investigator comes into the firm with an open mind, asks questions, and Mr. Jao mentioned credibility. The person who claimed to have been discriminated would have provided documentations on this day, this happened on these days, providing incidences, weaknesses that are there. Investigators come in, able to ask questions, call the person, ask follow-up questions. You know, when you read the account of the person as an investigator, there are some follow-up questions you have for the person who is making the allegation. So you have an interview with the person making the allegation. And one thing workplace investigation does is it provides accommodation for such a person. Some may say, they feel traumatized, they don't want to go back to the workplace, or they don't want to see investigator questioning them before their people. So investigators go in, hear the person who is alleging discrimination. If it's against an employee, would hear the other person. If there are weaknesses involved, we hear the weaknesses. And sometimes investigators also stay around the businesses to see how things are done, to have a feeling of how things are done. And if it's people or somebody in the upper managerial level, they would also be questioned. The important thing with an investigator is that an investigator does not have anything to gain. So investigator would be able to provide an objective outlook. So an investigator would now be able to provide a report that based on their reviewing of the facts and not just the story or not just the issues, that these are the facts, this is what has happened, and this is a conclusion that is brought by the investigator. So it is left for the company, depending on the jurisdiction where the businesses are. There are a lot of jurisdictions where government have policies in place, you know, with respect to labor law, employment law, and things like that. So there are regulations by the government on what employers should do in circumstances like that. But the role of workplace investigation is to provide a comfort or suitor for both the employer to protect themselves and the employee as well to see that they are protected in the workplace when they are working. So that's the role of an investigator with respect to workplace investigation or issues that may arise in a workplace.
Okay, so I'm going to repeat the question for Mr. Joel here.
I have it.
Okay, perfect.
So how important is it? It is to train HR, staff in workplace investigation. Well, HR, as it were, is the first level and second level of defense, for employers. If the knowledge is not there, you cannot apply it. So it is very critical that you equip your HR, personnel department with the right, knowledge to ensure that they can cite issues in the workplace and they can fix it before it becomes a bigger issue. When you have a functional, up-to-date HR department that operates on best practices, most of the issues that become, a big thing for employers can be quickly fixed because they have the knowledge. Through training, they can understand the process to follow. Essentially, we are not saying that they have to be the expert, which is where workplace consulting comes in, but at least having the basic understanding to notice an issue, identify an issue, provide solutions to it, and if they don't have the ability within to know where to go to ensure that the issue is resolved. So I think, to me, what is very critical is how do you ensure that your HR department has the knowledge to be your first level and second level of defense when it comes to employee-employer relationship. How do you ensure that they have the knowledge for them to be able to operate in a fair and equitable way to all the employees? Because if they don't have the understanding, it's going to be, HR has gone beyond just hiring and firing. HR now sits at the table of decision making in organizations. So how can you as HR professionals be able to understand the goal of the organizations and be able to align that with the employee expectations? So training is very key. And one of the importance of ensuring that you have a functional HR department with up-to-date policies and regulations is that some of the issues that could become a bigger threat for you as an employer could be addressed within. And that again requires constant training, exposing them to best practices, and ensuring that they have the tools and resources, to be able to deliver.
Thank you so much, Mr. Joe and Mrs. Oduwale, for those wonderful insights. And we would like employers and employees to be kept up to date about the most trendy and most updated information when it comes to organizations and how to make it successful and strengthened. So the next, I'm going to take one question from our participants, and the question is, what are the gaps in workplace issues that African workplaces should strive to cover? And then are there specific African cultures that workplace policies should have in contemplation? So I'm going to leave this open to the panelists. I know you can start off, and then I'm sure the other wouldn't mind rounding off or adding more into it. Thank you.
I can start off with that. This is a very big and huge question, and we have a long way to go with respect to that. We have a long way to go. I think one of the first things that would help when it comes to most African countries is legislative background and support. Where there is a legislative framework with respect to employment standards, with respect to labor laws that give guidance to employers and give guidance to employee. That's the most important thing, because that framework would ensure and provide a foundation for the policies for which the corporate bodies could be able to lean on. For instance, in a place like Canada, it is mandatory for companies that have a certain number of employees to ensure that their corporate policies are pasted in a public place where people can see, So there are policies like that that needs to be put in place. So for me, one is the framework itself, the government framework that shows that there is a support for workplace protection. And secondly, there are a lot of communal cultures that is brought to the workplace. Some of the ones that come readily to mind is with respect to roles and designation. Once a person, for instance, you have somebody who is employed as a driver. A driver would soon become a nanny, would soon become a cleaner, would soon become a gardener. He's just employed to be a driver. But once he's in the house, you are there, you send him to take the child to school and bring the child back from school, carry the child's bag, clean the child, and at the same time may need to take the child to the hairdresser. And when the driver comes home, the driver cuts the grass in the house and helps to sweep the floor in the house. So these are some issues and that needs to be addressed. And another one that I can think of from experience is communication. It's very important. No matter how big, how small employees are, they need to be addressed properly. These are some of the cultures we have, because our culture is very respectful, and I love our culture for that. Very respectful. We respect our elders, and we even have mutual respect for colleagues, which is a very important culture. But at the same time, if we're not careful, when we take this culture to the workplace, it could bring about bullying. Even when you have people that you're on the same work level, because the person is older, I would think you should do the bulk of the work when you are on the same level and you ought to work together. So that's another thing. And on the part of the employees as well, one culture that I see is that employees don't respect the time of the employer. You see an employee who is meant to be at work is using the employer email to send emails to friends, using the employer's paper to print his resume, his children's homework, using employer's resources, using employer's time. There are some employees, they are virtually late to work, giving excuses, one thing or the other. So this is another thing, laziness. They don't meet targets. The employees that take resources from the employer and they think it doesn't matter. If your work hours is 9 to 5, if you do anything outside the job of your employer in that 9 to 5, you're stealing your employer's time. You may think it doesn't matter, I'm just printing something from the email. It's wrong. You can't use your official email for your personal communications with friends and things like that. So these are some issues and culture from our normal culture that affects our workplace. There needs to be a change. I would hand over to Mr. Ajao. If anything readily comes to mind, I will talk about that.
Oh, well, so let me just add one or two things. I think one of the big things that we are still missing in some of our African nations is to have the right regulatory bodies. Like you rightly mentioned, in the Western world here, there are some requirements that need to be met as an employer, and you have different bodies regulating different issues. We have the Ontario Health Safety Act that deals with issues that has to do with harassment. You have a Human Rights Act. You have so many acts that comes with requirements and consequences. We are still missing that in most of these African nations. When you look at the way we are set up, we've reviewed a number of labor acts in some of the African countries. It's so watery that it doesn't speak much into employer-employee relationships. Some of them are still tying employer-employee issues to constitution. So we need to break things down. We need to have regulatory bodies that will be charged with responsibilities that will enable us to move workplace issues forward in the African countries. Like Ms. Odewale said when she was rounding up, the issue about employees doing what they want to do at their own time is because there are no expectations. Most times when we hire employees in the African country, the only thing they get is offer letter. There's no employee handbook to dictate that this is what has to be done. This is when you come in, this is when you go, this is your vacation, this is your time off, this is things that will guide their conduct. So we have a lot of gaps currently in the way we run things in African nations. So until we start taking those steps back, and again, we have professional bodies that when you look from the distance, it seems the objectives needs to be redefined, because even while the government is still trying to get the acts together to ensure that we have the right regulatory bodies, some of the professional bodies can actually step up. They can step up to ensure that, at least for the employers that belong to their organizations, they can start setting some standard that will start reflecting on the community, on the environment. So if you have a professional body that is dishing out the best practices that employers should be following, you will end up seeing that being replicated in our society. And one other thing that is still a big gap is ownership. You have situation where even some of the employers, they don't know what is happening to their employees because they've just vested that into an HR department that is not well trained, and they are doing their things. You end up seeing, having a situation whereby within the same organizations, people are having different terms of employment, terms of contracts. And again, it's because there's a disconnect between understanding what should be in place, employer-employee-wise, and who had the body that you have internally in charge of those responsibilities. So we have to look at the external situation that we have, regulatory bodies. We have to look at the professional arm of things, the professional bodies. What are they doing to ensure that they can actually move the work environment in African countries forward? And even within the organizations, what are the internal processes that needs to be reviewed? As an employer, what are you doing that you need to be referred to that needs to be revised to ensure that we are, because again, the world is a global village now. Things that are being done in the Western world can be replicated in Africa. But the challenge is, are we ready? And that is, again, why workplace is springing up to ensure that we can start passing this message across to the people that needs to hear it.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jao and Mrs. Oduole, for those wonderful answers. So we have another question from one of our participants, but before that, there's one of our questions here that would provide a little bit of insight into this question, and then it would be a follow-up question. First question is, how do I handle a difficult colleague or manager? And then the follow-up question is, what are the process of sanctioning an erring employee? So I would leave it open to, I think Mrs. Oduole can start, and then Mr. Jao will join in with some additional insights.
So in handling a difficult worker or a colleague or a manager at work, there are different dynamics to it. But one important thing is at work, if it's a colleague or a manager, what the expectations could be a bit different, but the principles still applies with all force to whether it's a difficult colleague or a manager. And believe you me, we've all come across them. There is just no how in a life experience you won't come across a difficult manager or a difficult colleague, but work has still to go on. You need to learn how to navigate that. And one important thing to note is communication. Once there is a difficult worker, a colleague, a co-employee needs to clearly and directly address the concerns and the issue in a calm and professional manner. And that's the key. For those, there are a lot of adages that speaks onto soft answers, bringing about a calmness. When you are aggravated, it may not be the right time to be able to tell somebody that you've offended me. Sometimes you just need to take a pause, take note what has happened, then you go back. But that is one. No emotions involved, but communicate clearly what the concerns are with respect to the concerns. And second is to focus on the behavior and not the person. So rather than attacking the person, you should just let the person know you did this, which I don't like, and not that, oh, that's how you people do. That's how, you don't go to the person. You just go professionally and address the behavior of the person. And it may not be very easy. That's why I said sometimes it might not be at that point of aggravation, because a person needs to be very calm and professional. Because usually when you want to address a bully, especially someone who is so used to having his or her way, it would become confrontational or defensive. That would usually be the modus operandi of the other person. So you need to be calm and professional with respect to that. And where issues like this continue in a workplace, it may be good for an employee to find support from other employees, look for common grounds with respect to solving issues. Because believe you me, you can't keep going to your manager if he's a colleague and keep reporting everybody. You just need to learn to work with people. Except where you have people that are so difficult, they are making it impossible for you to be able to do your job. Because you yourself, you are not even perfect for your colleagues you're working with. So you need to learn to be able to work with people and get them at the best, whatever they can do at the best, and you move on with whatever you can do. But where their difficulty is affecting your own productivity, affecting your mental health, then it's very important you address it. And if you can't have it resolved, then you just go to the supervisor or the manager. And like we said, always take notes of events that's occurred and not attacking the person. Be professional and let the person know what has happened. And don't assume or jump into conclusion, And a lot of times I've found out that even within employee, if you found somebody who is difficult or somebody is not performing a role, you could even try to find a way of bringing about a suggestion, brainstorming. Oh, I think this is this. How do you think we can resolve this? So you are already opening a room for resolution, even while you are letting the person know this is a concern for me. So it's not really an attack. You are letting the person know that this is a concern. But where it is a senior or a manager, the same thing too, you communicate it to the person and you let the person know. And the same thing too happens, you bring a room for brainstorming, technique for seeking mediation, reconciliation. And if you don't see any improvement or it persists, or you feel there's a retaliation that maybe because I've just told this manager I have these concerns, you now realize that it's giving you the worst shift, is making life even more difficult for you, or is turning the other team members against you, then it's time you go to the next person who is higher in rank in the organization to be able to report what is happening. But objectively or in summary, all I would say is communication is key. Address issues and not person. Be professional, be calm when somebody is dealing with situation like this. So that's, I don't know if Mr. Ajao has anything to add to that.
Well, just like we've been saying all along, for every situation in any organization, you can always consult the policies that you have in place. Even as employee having issues with employees, every policy should have a process that you can follow, escalation process. So when you've tried to do what you need to do based on what Mr. Duwale did mention, then you can follow the escalation process within the organization. Like she said, your manager, your one-up, and if it still doesn't work, then you can seek external support. Miss Anu, I think you are muted.
Yeah, mute.
Right. Thank you so much for those wonderful insights and answers to that question. I hope we've been able to answer the question of the participant that posed that. We still have a bit more time to answer some more questions, and we're going to be posing them. So if you have more questions, please drop them in the Q&A session or drop them in the chat, and we'll raise them up for the panelists. So the next question I'm going to ask has to do with another trendy issue that is in the workplace now, is in the work terrain, and that is mental health and work-life balance. I know we've heard a lot about it. You know, as women, we are mothers, we are sisters, we're going to church. In African communities, there's one event, there's prayer meeting. There's a lot going on. As fathers as well, you know, pastors are there, they still have to go to work. There's a lot of commitments from men and women alike. And as employers and employees, as professionals, we need to, you know, take time for ourselves to think of how we are going to manage that balance between our work life and our life. So I'm going to open it up to Mrs. Oduwale and Mr. Jao to speak on how do I, as a professional, manage my work-life balance.
Thank you, Anu. One thing that the benefits we've gotten from COVID-19 is an awareness of self. And this is what I personally have experienced myself. Post-COVID-19, I had to sit down and talk to myself. You know, I called myself body, soul, and spirit, and I had to address myself. There's some areas of law I practiced that I felt were not good for my mental health, and I dropped them literally. So when we talk of mental health being, is both physical and mental, you know, personal life and work life, so that there is a balance in that. I met somebody who we usually go to the same social space, and I discovered she comes for meeting regularly, unlike before. And I went to her, oh, what has happened? We see you more at meetings. And she's a nurse. She said, oh, I quit my job at the hospital. And you hardly will you find somebody who is in a hospital in Canada earning so well. She said she had to take a job that is paying her about, she said it's almost half less than what she was earning. But she realizes that she has time for herself, she has time for her family. Her life is just balanced, she enjoys it. So people have learned to prioritize. So one thing we need to do with respect to it is setting priorities. To get a work-life balance, one needs to identify what is my priority. We need to make a living, money needs to come in, but the essence is how much do you need? You know, do you need so much that you need to amass everything? So one needs to really sit down and realize what is important for me. And one needs to learn to establish boundaries, especially with flexible and remote working. Employees seem to be able to work against themselves. Once you just sit on the table, it's easy to carry the computer on the bed, on the table. You just realize from 7 till 11, you are still working, so you need to learn when to switch off. You need to know work time is 9 to 5. Any emails coming after 5, you don't respond to it until the next morning, except you are doing a kind of job that you need to answer it or you're on call. But aside from that, if the expectations of not answering that phone is not part of your duty, you switch off. You need to set boundaries. Even emails, when you're at work, you need to send out to check emails so that you can be productive and achieve the target of what you need to do. And one other thing with respect to taking care of oneself, especially once we've been through this bad attitude of work, and work, is really difficult to detach. So it has to be a concerted and a consistent effort. We fail, you get up and say, oh, I'm at work 12 hours today. Tomorrow, you still try. You don't give up that because I couldn't do it, I did not do it. You still try again. And trying also means taking breaks. I remember in Canada here, the Law Society usually come to, we call it, they usually come to do like inspection for lawyers from time to time. And part of the expectations they have for lawyers is you must go on vacation every 4 months. So vacation does not mean you need to go somewhere, but it means you need to shut down from work every 4 months because they know how intense it is. So if they check your record and they see that you don't do that, you will be penalized. It will be a red record for you. So you can imagine how important rest is. So we need to do that as well. You could schedule breaks in a day. Every 2 hours, I take a walk, which is also good for the body physically. Every 2 weeks, I take a break. And one needs to really schedule this time on your calendar for every day. If you are going to have a break, it's not a bad habit that I used to have. During my break, I'll be eating, I'll be having meetings or doing some things. We really need to learn to take care of ourselves because these are things that leads to burnout. So self-care is very important, physical, mental, eating well. Because by the time you are sold out to work, you are always on the table working. You don't have time to plan proper meals. You don't have time to eat good meals. So that's why you just eat any nonsense and rubbish that comes one's way instead of eating deliberately. So that is very important. And for people who work with employers that don't set boundaries, I think it's very important that one should learn to communicate that to them. There has to be boundaries. This is my work time. Not somebody sending you a message at 7 p.m. or your closing time is 5 o'clock. And when it's 5 o'clock, maybe that is when your boss is coming to the office at 4. I know in some cultures it's hard, but it's just that one's mental health is very important. Except you could talk to your employer. If the time he comes to the office is at 4, it's productive 4 to 7 or 8. So maybe you could talk to him. If you can make your time to work around this time and not that you would have been in the office since 9, he would say, after all, you've been in the office since 9, you were not doing nothing. But you were there to work. He was the one that didn't give you anything to do. So we need to do it's an ongoing process that requires an adjustment, assessment, but it's very important that one prioritizes self-care and also establishing boundaries for oneself, one's family, one's business. So you set space, your faith, your personal self, your work, your family, everything must be able to align all together. So I don't know if Mr. Jawu would have something to add to that.
Oh, thank you so much, Mr. Dewale. I would just add 1 or 2 points from employer perspectives now. Because like you said, a lot of things that as employees we need to do to ensure that we can strike a work-life balance. In addition to that, the employers too, can help, in this situation. There's a bill in Canada here, called employee disengagement, where they encourage employers not to send, emails or communicate with employees after certain hours. I think employers can, follow suit when it comes to that. You can encourage your managers, to ensure that when it's closing time, you don't keep on going back to your employees to log in and do some work for you. And a lot of other things that are being done nowadays is to create activities that will help employees, to ensure that they are aware, of that work-life balance. Like you rightly said, it's possible that employees will log in 7 o'clock in the morning and they will work till 11 p.m. But as employers, you can create activities. There are some companies now that they have a set time where the managers will send out an email to all the employees and tell them, just take a walk. When you come back, let me know. I'm going to be watching your laptop. If you are still online, I will know you're there. So just being proactive about, walking the talk, encouraging employees to actually, take time for themselves. So I think, as employees have responsibility to watch out for themselves, employers as well can put some measures in place to ensure that they are constantly checking up on their employees and they have activities that will ensure that they're striking that balance within their workforce.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jao and Mrs. Odwale, for that wonderful insight on managing work-life balance. So we are at the end of our program right now. We hope we've been able to answer questions on, different issues that you've had, questions or inquiries about. We've learned a lot during this short time that we've been together. We've talked about, recent trends in the workplace, recent challenges or new and old challenges that professionals and organizations face in their day-to-day lives. We've also learned about workplace investigation, which is a new trend going around now, and how organizations can take an active part in that. It is important for employees and employers to try and build themselves up, whether it's through learning new things, finding ways to make things work better within their organizations, or just, staying relevant, whether in their policies, in the way they do things, in trainings, in webinars given to both the managers, the HR consultants, or the employees in the organizations. So workplace consultants, we're here to answer any questions that you might have. If you have questions, we've posted our email address and our social media handles on the chat. Please take a minute to take a look at them. Keep the WhatsApp number on hand, keep the email address on hand. If you have questions with regards to your organization or your life as a professional, please send them to us. We'll take time out to send them to our panelists and hopefully have something back for you. If you know someone that wasn't able to attend this event, please have them go to our YouTube page. A recording of this session will be made available on our YouTube page, so you can take a look at it. We would have other specific trainings coming up at a later time on issues specific to some of what we've talked about today and other things as well. Some of the topics that would be coming up would be credibility at work, politics and its impact on organizational growth, discrimination at work, sexual harassment at work. There's even one called Don't Touch Me. I'm sure you are all excited to follow up with us and learn about when those webinars or sessions will take place. We also do trainings specific to organizations, as Mrs. Odwale and Mr. Jao has talked about. So please feel free, if you're a business owner and you want to project your organizations to better heights, strengthen your organizations and your employees, reach out to us. We are here to give you as much consultation as we can. We also have something specific to us coming soon. It's called our training on how to become a workplace investigator. Don't let the word investigator scare you away. We all want our organizations and our employees to be satisfied. We want excellent people to be retained in those organizations. And we know we're all full of potential. We just need to tap into it. Once again, Thank you all so much for taking time out to attend this session. And we hope that we've been able to provide you with excellent insights and answers to some of the questions that you had. Feel free to reach out to us. Our email address, info@workplacenigeria.com, and our WhatsApp number, 416-733-55, I believe it's 30. If I'm unsure, please check the chat. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Keep in touch and join our community. Thank you all for attending this webinar, and we wish you a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.